right, everyone, it's week 3, and this week we're going to dive into an examination of media in politics and how often we see things on certain media outlets anyway, and we come to believe them in ways that we otherwise wouldn't without additional evidence. So before you watch this, I want to make sure you've gone and watched the other 2 videos I've linked. They're from a magician on Fremont Street named Ali, that's in Las Vegas, the north side, and he's been working out there for years. When you see tricks like this with your own eyes, do you feel like maybe you're missing something, like this doesn't make sense? The answer is of course, because our eyes are one of our organs of senses that we value more than others. So today I want to talk about a philosopher named Michel de Certeau, who you weren't assigned to read, but who I want to use to center some of the content you're going to encounter this week. Michel de Certeau talks about belief, and specifically the way that we learn to believe things, and then how after we learn things, we deploy that term belief to sort of describe what it is that we feel like we believe. We don't necessarily actually believe what we say we believe all the time, so much as we just feel like that's probably the best way to describe where I'm at and get on with my life. As humans, we don't really want to think back through specifics of belief over and over, day after day. So we just kind of peg ourselves as this particular political party, or this particular religion, or this particular opinion. And we tend to invest that belief back into institutions that we trust, often the government, or the church, or our religion, or our family structure, and we feel like belief is something we have to have. We trust that the truth will come out. We have faith in the government. I believe in the moral arc of the universe. These are ways we deploy that term belief. Now, of course, there's another kind of belief that's really related to this, and it's what makes us do what we do. And you can think of the old wives' tale of Brer Rabbit, where he's caught by the hound that's been chasing him for so long, and the hound's going to eat him. It's over. He's got him by the ears. But he has this bright idea. If he can just make the wolf believe that it would be torture if he was thrown in the briar patch, the wolf might do it, because he knows enough about what drives the wolf, a hatred and a desire to eat the rabbit, that he knows by telling him this would be torturous to me, it'll be a big temptation for the hound to throw him back into the briar patch. And if you know anything about rabbits, once they get in a briar patch, they're just fine, whereas the wolf can no longer chase him. So those 2 forms of belief, which are actually very interrelated, they play out, as we're going to talk about, in our media, in the news we consume, and where we go to get information, which, of course, in 2022 and onward, is changing a lot in real time. We don't just turn on the nightly news anymore as a country. We tune into social media, or we go to blogs, or we read stories, or at least headlines of stories, on major news outlet sites. But his point is we still trust certain outlets, and whether that's a TV news anchorman who's telling us what's going on in the world, or whether that's an individual who we like to listen to because they tell it how it really is, so to speak, or they speak our language, when those people tell us things, we come to believe them. And much like the hound in the Brer Rabbit story, we often make decisions about what to do based on what we're told. Now, of course, it isn't just people telling us things. It's often advertisement, and it's often more than just the obvious message. I mean, clearly the New York Times isn't selling truth, but they do want you to think about their organization as conflated with truth, and maybe to go for it when you're looking for something like truth. Other ads, like the SpongeBob SquarePants spray painted in a cartoon manner next to a smiling baby and a dog wearing sunglasses, they tell us things about the world too. In this case, that SpongeBob is kid-friendly, that it's a happy cartoon, and that it's a pretty big piece of our culture, considering somebody put it on this wall. All of these images in front of you that are advertisements teach you things about the world, but what they teach you is often based in what you already know about the world, as is evidenced by the "Got Dab" sign at the bottom, which would definitely mean different things to different people. Of course, other signs are related to our cultural history, and they too teach us more than what they actually say. The sign in the middle is for Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, and of course the Indians Welcome spray paint over the top has been re-added repeatedly by historians who want to keep that image there. But it goes back to a cultural event from 50 years ago in our country where indigenous folks flocked to the island for a bit of a standoff that in the end didn't quite work out how they'd planned. Same thing with the waiting room for whites only. Of course, at the time that this was in some waiting room somewhere, it clearly said, here's what the order of our culture is right now. But nowadays when we see these signs, we actually see an image of our cultural history, and we can understand a little bit more about what the world was like back then, before many of us were alive. And it's everything. It's the stop signs, the crosses, the newspaper dispensers that we just know what they are. It's the billboards on the side of the road that don't even contain the whole image, and yet we know that's the Golden Arches. It's the systems that are built into our phones and our stereos in our car. We are constantly immersed in messages screaming at us from all sides, whether we like it or not. That's what it's like to live nowadays in our culture. Even as we get ready to go to sleep, again, these quotes are all from Michel de Certeau, who you're not assigned to read, but you're welcome to if you'd like. We watch TV as we go to bed. We consume more messages, and those things inform our view of the world. Now, sometimes it's spaces like the bakery or a church, spots that we can go in and look around ourselves or that we might have our own personal experience with to balance out what we see on TV. So we don't just take it as pure fact. But other times it's spaces like prison, and we come to believe things from what we see on TV, whether it's portrayed as fiction or not, whether it's portrayed as the truth or not. Here's a good example of that. The introductory scene to The Shawshank Redemption, where we all see an image that we know is fictional of a penitentiary, and yet unless you've been to a penitentiary yourself, and in fact, according to a lot of research, even if you have been inside an actual prison, you still use scenes like this to make sense of the world. You come to accept that what you're seeing is, in many ways, a representation of an actual prison. Of course, same with a lot of the other things we see on TV. This is Sarah Connor in one of the later series, The Terminator, blasting a robot with a shotgun. And you can see that, well, even though we know this is fiction, we might learn, unless you've got some sort of other experience with a shotgun, that a shotgun blows people back, or blows robots back in this case. It's not necessarily what happens. I'll leave you with this. It's just sort of a long list of different things we've learned throughout the years from television and from other forms of media. We've sort of come to take these things for granted, when in fact most of them are not true.